Hello and welcome to this video discussing music theory. Today's topic is how to determine generic and specific intervals using just one or two simple steps. Promise I'll get through this within 15 minutes and leave you with a method that is straightforward and won't fail you. Straight to it then. Generic intervals describe the distance between two notes on the staff. And mostly they're ordinal numbers like seconds, thirds, fourths, fifths, sixths, sevenths. Musicians also occasionally refer to ninths and tenths and twelfths, but these are less common, and we'll deal with the other set. Musicians have special names for the ones that I skipped. We say unison instead of first, and octave instead of eighth. Sometimes you'll hear prime instead of unison, but this is less common as well. So you'll never hear firsts or eighths, and that's partly because eighths have a different meaning in music, and that would be confusing, and partly music is like language. It's filled with exceptions and inconsistencies and tradition. You just have to get used to those. So, how do you identify a generic interval? All you have to do is count the note names from the lowest to the highest. Here are the intervals lined up from small to large, just using C as the base note. I'm sure that you are used to the fact that C is kind of our reference point for when we're introducing new topics in music theory. So as you can see, the first one, the unison, looks odd because the two notes are right next to each other. This indicates that there are two voices or instruments that are producing the same pitch, in this case, C. So you should call it a unison. I'll make a U here to indicate that as a shorthand. Other than unisons, you have to count lines and spaces, or count off the note names. As you name off the notes one by one, include the bottom note as one. So for example, if you were counting C to G, C, D, E, F, G, there's a fifth. We'll talk about those in a minute. Accidentals do not change the generic interval. To some instrumentalists who know their instruments well, this can be kind of confusing because sometimes two notes might have two different names, two enharmonic names for each of those notes, and it changes the name of the interval. So it depends on what you see in the notation to identify what the generic interval is. Accidentals do not affect the generic interval. So we'll deal with those others in a moment. For now, just count lines and spaces, counting off the note names. A second, for example, will always involve two neighboring note names and look a little crowded, like this. F and G, A, B, E, F, right? Two notes. Just start at the bottom and count up. Similarly, a third. F, G, A. G to C is a fourth. G, A, B, C, right? Counting lines and spaces. So is D to G. I can start anywhere I like. D, E, F, G. There's another fourth. You can have these intervals again. I'm starting on any note. D flat to A flat is a fifth. D, E, F, G, A. Doesn't matter what the accidentals are, as you're concentrating on those letter names of the notes. So is E to B. G to E is a sixth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So is C sharp to A. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Here is a seventh. F, G, A, B, C, D, E flat. Right? The accidental again doesn't change the generic interval. The generic interval tells us what is given in the notation. Now we get to the trickier part, naming the specific interval. Here is the line of fifths, and it again comes to our aid. If you don't know about the line of fifths, see my video explaining it more in depth. But here I'll write it out again. In short, the circle of fifths, which we are familiar with, is really actually a spiral, not a circle, as many theorists have pointed out. If we stretch the spiral into a single line, well, then we have a line of fifths, and this really has a lot of useful properties. Here is what you have to memorize in the same way that you would the circle of fifths, this order of letters or notes. F, C, G, D, A, E, B. Feral cats go down alleys eating birds. Or make up something that is much more memorable to you, but I'll just keep referring to that. And then you write it out 3 times. Feral cats go down alleys eating birds. Feral cats go down alleys eating birds. And then with those 3 sets, you're going to leave the middle ones as naturals, put the sharps to the right and the flats to the left. Now that we've got that set up again, how does it help us with intervals? First, you need to know that there are 5 types of intervals, or modalities as we call them. There's perfect, major, minor, augmented, and diminished. I'll cover each of those in order. The second thing that you need to do when you are measuring an interval is to use the line of fifths with this very simple procedure. Always start with the lowest note, it's a musical tradition, and then count positions inclusively to the left or to the right. So let's show you how this works. First, let's do the perfect intervals. These are the easy ones. The unisons and octaves are just the same notes, right? They're either occupying the same space or line, or they're 8 notes apart. Fourths and fifths. Unisons, obviously the same pitch, right? That's fairly simple, straightforward. You don't really need the line of fifths for that. The fifths and fourths, you should know, are never major or minor, and they never become so. Remember that the line of fifths is a line of perfect fifths. If I move 1 position to the right from the lowest to the highest given note, or that was clockwise on the circle of fifths, I have a perfect fifth. If the upper note is to the left of the lower note 1 position, it's a perfect fourth. So pick a note, any note, move 1 to the right, it's a perfect fifth. 1 to the left, you have a perfect fourth. Now on to the major and minor intervals. On the line of fifths, start from the lowest given note and count your way inclusively to the top note. That same procedure. Let's go from seconds to sevenths in size order. First, determine the generic interval. Now count from the lowest pitch to the higher one. If you go to the right 6 or fewer positions, you have a major interval. If you go to the left 6 or fewer positions, you have a minor interval. Now to the major and minor intervals. On the line of fifths, start from the lowest given note and count your way inclusively to the top note. So let's go from seconds to sevenths in size order. First, determine the generic interval. Here is a second. Now count from the lowest pitch to the higher one, moving just 3 positions over to the right, so it's a major second. B to C, I know it's a second, but now I'm moving to the left, right, from B to C, and 6 positions in this case. Here's B to C sharp, a major second. And finally, to use some flats, here's E flat to F, also a major second. Notice that from now on, I'll use a lowercase m to indicate minor and an uppercase m to indicate major. That's standard practice in music theory, so I'll just shorten my scripts so you can see that and how we use it. Here are some thirds, G to B. The generic interval is a third. On the line of fifths, they occupy the ends of 5 positions. F to A flat. Now I'm heading to the left. I know it's a third, but to the left, it's minor. E to G, same thing, I'm moving to the left. Let's add flats to both of those. E flat to G flat, again to the left, a minor third. Fourths and fifths we've already talked about, those are neighboring notes. Let's go to the sixths. Again, start from the bottom note that's given. So here's E to C, a minor sixth. On the line of fifths, I'm heading to the left. D to B, major sixth. I have to go to the right from D to B. B to G sharp, also a major sixth. How about D flat to B flat? Also a major sixth. Less than 6 positions and heading to the right. Sevenths, same procedure, I think you've got it now. F to E is a major seventh. I'm going to start at D and go to C. I'm heading to the left, that's a minor seventh. D sharp to C sharp, just to use some less familiar notes maybe. Again, a minor seventh. C sharp to B sharp. I'm headed to the right, it's a major seventh. All right. It sure beats counting half steps or imagining a major scale if that's a relatively new concept to you. What about the 2 other modalities, the diminished and augmented intervals? Well, the line of fifths shows those too. If you head to the right on the line of fifths more than 6 positions, then you have an augmented interval. If you head to the left more than 6 positions, you have a diminished interval. So to the right, major, and then beyond 6, augmented. To the left, minor, beyond that, diminished. So F to B, I know it's a fourth, F, G, A, B, and the line tells me that they are 7 positions apart, so the interval is an augmented fourth. C to F sharp, similarly a fourth, and 7 positions. F sharp to C, well, I know it's a fifth, F, G, A, B, C, and then if I start at F sharp and go to C, I'm heading to the left. So it's a fifth, but this is a diminished fifth because it's more than 6 positions between those two, inclusive. E to B flat, same thing. I'm heading to the left and more than those 6 positions. I want you to notice now that I have added a new symbol. That is a 5 with a slash through it. That diagonal slash can be used on any interval number to indicate that it is diminished. So I'll use that from now on. That is a classic musician's shorthand for a diminished interval. How about C to G sharp? I know that's a fifth. C, D, E, F, G. But C to G sharp, I'm going way more than 6 positions, so it must be an augmented fifth. E flat to B, same thing. It's a fifth, E, F, G, A, B. That's the generic interval, but the specific interval, looking to the line of fifths, is augmented because it's more than 6 positions. So notice that fourths and fifths, once again, are either perfect, diminished, or augmented, but never major or minor. Just keep that thought in mind. You can use the same procedure for any 2 notes. E to G flat, that's a third, and I head to the left more than 6 positions, so it's a diminished third. If I invert that interval so that G flat is on the bottom and E on the top, it's a sixth. But what kind? Now I have an augmented sixth. Here is F sharp to E flat. F, G, A, B, C, D, E. It's a seventh. The line of fifths tells us that it's a diminished seventh because the interval to the left is greater than 6. Likewise, if I invert those notes so that E flat is low and F sharp is over it, I can see that it's a second, E, F, but that it is an augmented second. All right. If you look at that on a guitar or on a keyboard, you might say, well, that's really just a minor third. Well, I'll get to in another video why it is that we perceive those differently, and so we spell them differently than a minor third. We spell it as that augmented second. So there it is in a nutshell. The line of fifths once again comes to our aid in explaining music theory. This video only shows you how to identify intervals accurately. Related topics for intervals are what they sound like and why you can have 2 different spellings for otherwise similar intervals, and also how to invert them, which is a fairly simple and straightforward task. So look for those videos on my channel, and we'll see you next time. It occurred to me that you can still use the circle of fifths for intervals, using the circle also to help you identify major, minor intervals, diminished to a certain extent. But of course, the line of fifths gives you, more of the possible notes, whereas with the circle of fifths, it tends to cut off the circle a little soon. But let me show you that anyway, just so that you can see kind of how it works. So let me draw a circle here and see how that turns out. Not terrible. So I want C here, and then typically on the other side of the circle we have our G flat, F sharp. All right, so C, I actually like to start with F, even though I'm not doing the line of fifths. So feral cats go, that's supposed to be a G. Feral cats go down alleys eating birds. And then in the other direction, we can just spell out the word bead with flats. Right, and then there's G flat on the bottom. So if you kind of hold your pen or your pencil straight up and down, your major intervals, let's say we're starting at C, and your pen is going to point to the bottom note that you're looking at. So for example, let me put these notes here. If you're looking at C and something else, so let's say C and A natural, if your notes fall within like to the 5 o'clock position, anywhere in here, you have a major interval. Starting again from the bottom note and working your way clockwise around the circle of fifths. So as you can see, C to A, it's less than the 5 o'clock position of the string. It's just 3 o'clock. So you're fine. If you move around to different notes, as the bottom note, for example, if we have maybe A flat to F. All right, so I'm going to move my pen in a different direction. So I'm going to point at A flat, right, and then straight across. The A flat position is like at 8 o'clock, so I want to go over to 2 o'clock. So point at A flat. You can see that all of these are major intervals starting from the A flat. And so A flat to F, that is a major interval. I know from here I've counted 6 lines and spaces, or I've counted off the letters A, B, C, D, E, F. I know it's a sixth. And so you can use this circle of fifths. Again, it's kind of like a clock. Use your pen or your finger to point at the note, and then the one that's straight across the clock is going to be the 7th position. That's where you end up with the augmented interval in this direction. Right? Minor intervals will similarly work in this scheme. So you can still use the circle of fifths, but just remember that you're going to run out pretty quickly of the notes you might need, because we tend to stop the circle with just a few of these notes, like maybe you'll see C sharp there. What's an example of a minor interval? How about F and D flat? All right, so I point to F with my pen, and B is directly across, and so you can see that D flat is less than those 7 positions, right? And so it's a minor interval. When I'm heading counterclockwise, I'm going to have a minor interval. Now, when my pen is pointing at any particular note, like say I've got F on the bottom and B on the top, right? That's straight across. That is going to be beyond that 5 o'clock position, right? Then we have, depending on which is the bottom, we have a diminished or augmented interval. So starting from F with the bottom as the bottom note, and we go around clockwise, right? Then we know we have an augmented fourth. I know it's a fourth because I've counted the lines and spaces, or I've counted off the letters F, G, A, B, and then I've got an augmented fourth. If B is on the bottom and F is on the top, well then I start at B and I'm going counterclockwise, across, and then there's the first of the diminished intervals. That is a diminished fifth. I'll use that shorthand with 5 with the slash through it to indicate diminished fifth. Anything beyond that, I have other diminished intervals if I keep going this way, or if I'm heading around clockwise, I've got augmented intervals. If it goes beyond the 5 o'clock position from wherever I start, right? So the pen indicates the dividing line. The problem with the augmented and diminished intervals is you very quickly can run out of the correct note names with the circle of fifths. If you think of it as a spiral, that helps, but that's a little hard to draw, right? So there it is. That's how to get to the augmented and diminished as well. Looking at the letters, the note names that are straight across the circle, and then beyond that dividing line. So I hope you enjoyed that exciting conclusion to my discussion of interval identification using the line of fifths and then also the circle of fifths. If you get some skills with that, it can also help you. And it can help you teach others too to understand how to name intervals. See you next time.